Dr. Eric Cheung will talk about transforming from lecturers into researchers, coping with changes of a college, transitioning towards a university. Dr. Cheung has taught academic writing, marketing writing, and applied linguistics. His main research interests include text linguistics, corpus-based language pedagogy, and teacher professional development. His research studies are primarily informed by systemic functional linguistics and legitimation code theory. He is also associate editor for linguistics and human sciences. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Eric Cheung.
Thank you. A wonderful introduction, Jennifer. And thanks so much for coming to my talk. This is very different from what I've been doing, as Jennifer has mentioned. I've been doing a lot of text analysis, and it's basically a leap of faith doing something else. So I want to start with saying that maybe you will find relevance to many of us, especially for the Cantonese-speaking audience. So it's from Brescia's in 2019. Its work, impermanence has remained a consistent feature. So in Cantonese, or if you do listen to Cantopop like 30, 40 years ago with Roman Tam's song, Bin Wan Yun Si Weng Hang. So change is the constant. So I think the changes that we have been experiencing as no matter it is higher education academic staff, it will be, no matter it's the changes having to do with the pandemic or the natural change that we are undergoing. For example, we are heading towards the direction of becoming a research university, or we are embracing these kind of changing educational landscape. We have different kinds of coping mechanisms or coping strategies in order to help us go about the educational landscape in the territory, in the city. So my study that I'm going to share with you today is a small part of a larger study, an independent one conducted with Dr. Joseph Lau. I have to emphasize that it is independent because in this way, we can be independent from a funder's perspective. So we are not speaking for the policymakers or the fund holders or the fund givers. But I also want to say that we are not speaking just for ourselves as academic turning researchers or teachers turning researchers, because we're going to talk about how we view our behavior or our identity in face of the changes. And that's why when it comes to an opportunity, Alex and Letitia have given me regarding the volume, the upcoming volume on English for academic purposes, practitioner, agency and identity. I'm going to write a book chapter for the volume. And so maybe as you are from different disciplines, you will still find some relevance regarding EAP teachers' perception on changes or their own changes when they transition towards being like researchers or doing EAP or other research related to English. So today I'm going to just focus on research intensive EAP lecturers. So very quickly, I hope that my talk will be short so that we will open the floor for more discussions, because in this case, maybe it will be good that we can engage in a dialogic, a conversation about how we can, not to say improve, but how we can tap into our identities and how we can take control of what we can do in face of the changes that are that we are facing. So I'll talk very briefly about the changes of in the higher education institutional landscape under the neoliberal backdrop. I will also talk about the lecturers research engagement. And then from the little study that I have conducted, I've interviewed some lecturers who are teaching EAP courses for a college. I'll look at how they are coping with the precarity that precarity means the instability and the uncertainties that are ahead of them. So we will also see how we are going to open the dialogue by discussing the available and the anticipated support, the ones that the EAP researchers will want. So I think it will also be very relevant for all of us in terms of amidst the heavy teaching and service and administrative. So we are actually playing multiple roles in an institution. So amid of this, what motivates EAP lecturers when they transition towards the research lane, and how they will view their identity and cope with the uncertainties of being the researcher teacher. So the changes would mainly be like originating from the early 2000s in Hong Kong, when we are working towards massifying and privatizing post-secondary and tertiary education. And in that sense, we are trying to like compete based on the free market principles. We're trying to compete for student recruitment. We are trying to develop new quality programs. We are also developing our research capability so that we can raise our institutional ranking. And this is one of our goals as well, as we are planning, or we are working towards becoming a private university. So one of the measures that the institutions, the higher education institution would take would be promoting research culture, introducing performance indicators, so that in that sense, the institution or the individual staff will be accountable for the performance in the institution. So the study is situated in a self-financed higher education institution. So hereafter I'll call it the college. So as we know, this kind of community college, or a combination of community college and an institution providing top-up degree programs, would be teaching intensive in the first place to provide quality education for students to be articulated to further studies. So they're also under the CAP 320 ordinance, in that we are gradually transitioning into university. So I guess this is a major trend right now for all the self-financed institutions providing like associate programs, undergraduate programs. Eventually they'll become universities if the criteria are met. And those criteria would be how they're going to maintain, or they could improve student enrollment, how they would provide or design quality programs and pass the accreditation, providing maybe even postgraduate programs, and also how they are going to foster scholarly research, which is the focus of the talk today. And the English for academic purposes lecturers in the college, I know some scholars like Taylor, Sarah, would be avoiding to use using lecturers. But for now, because in colleges, the job title for EAP teachers would be lecturers, and there are no research track, that kind of academic structure. So we don't have, they don't have assistant professors, associate professors. So every college teacher will be called lecturers in this case. So unlike some government-funded universities, in that they have autonomous or separate English language centers, the EAP lecturers in the college would be a part of the Languages and Communication Division, who provide teaching college-wide discipline-specific EAP courses. And because these lecturers are a part of the language division, very likely they will have to teach other like communication subjects or workplace English, workplace communication, professional communication, or content courses such as translation, linguistics, maybe also other communication or literature courses. So they are largely teaching intensive. So a lot of them will be having to teach 15 hours a week or maybe more if they are invited to have additional teaching assignments. So as we've talked about the changes in the higher education landscape regarding massifying or privatizing higher education so that we can move towards becoming private research universities. So the college is trying to incentivize research efforts. And there are lots of factors pushing and pulling whether the lecturers would be interested in doing research in the college. Okay, the motivators would be when these lecturers are actually highly experienced teaching experts, moving towards doing research would be some kind of a leap of faith. Or maybe when the career profile changes in that sense, they find it more precarious moving or going about their, to another track. So more likely they find the security in a teaching position. And unlike, excuse me, other ELT centers or maybe some English language centers in Europe, we don't have to hire a lot of visiting lecturers. So we're not talking about the precarity or the instability in terms of adjunct employment or unstable employment, as Alex Ding had talked about the precarity regarding the unstable employment or the EAP faculty being marginalized as the service unit. So perhaps the lecturers don't think in that way. So, and we'll see in the research findings later on. In that, to motivate EAP lecturers to do research, aside from incentivizing research efforts, we also encourage scholarly activities through teaching research balance, how the EAP lecturers are deciding what kind of research they are undertaking and how much research they are taking amid of their teaching duties. And the second one will be teaching research alignment. So it's pretty much like the second part Letitia talked about, how the research teams are working with the teaching teams in that the research is made meaningful, in that we can link the theories to practice. And instead of having a clear research track, the college would call the research track would be a lane. So branching out of the research, the teaching track as a staff deployment strategy. So that means the college is tapping into different talents of the academic staff, in that the teaching staff can apply for the scholar scheme if they hope to apply for major grants, if they want to try out their research capabilities. And if they apply for being the research lane staff, a part of the assessment will be on intellectual contributions. For example, attending conferences, presenting papers, publishing journal articles, or securing major fundings. And the incentives mainly would be the lecturers would be receiving teaching remission, and they also have internal funds. And in terms of admin support, helping them fill out the form, helping them submit the forms to the major grants organizers or the committees. And there are also awards recognizing the research efforts of the research staff. So in the study, I adopted the qualitative approach. So I conducted 4 actually 6 semi-structured reviews with research lane lecturers in the division of language and communication. But eventually, I've chosen 4 because 1, they are teaching EAP courses, and 2, they are doing EAP-related research. And each interview lasted around 45 minutes. And to ensure the confidentiality, I've removed the interviewees' information before transcribing the data, so that we don't know who they are or what kind of admin duties they are doing. And then I coded the interview verbatim using MaxQDA for a qualitative content analysis. So roughly, I've generated 220 codes, and eventually it is reduced into around 5 major themes. And the 2 main themes that I want to share with you today would be, arising from the interview data, would be the precarity that arises from the complex identities as research lane EAP lecturers. So I'll focus on their sayings, what they say. Let's see, I will also need your help, whether there are relevant analytical framework or any theoretical framework I could link so that to make the findings more useful. But precarity would be one area we can pursue. And the second theme coming out would be amid the precarity experienced among these EAP research lecturers, how do they cope with this kind of precarity as they go about on the research lane? So here are some of their reflections. So mainly it's about the overwhelming teaching load, and amid the overwhelming teaching load, they also have to do the research. They have to spend long hours. For example, when lecturers said, I spent over 16 hours per day when they had to write proposals, when they have to write research articles, and they have a deadline. And then lecturer A says, I don't think I can survive in the long run. Aside from the overwhelming teaching load, another time-related issue would be the time limit, because these EAP lecturers, these research lane EAP lecturers will be reviewed annually. And usually the publication cycles for humanities, this is something that I would like to address. Unlike science researchers who would get a lot of publications out of collaborations, out of very frequent publication cycles, shorter publication cycles, humanities researchers usually would take longer, more painful kind of review or revision processes. At times when you have 2 reviewers, maybe you will have 3. And this kind of insecurity that these EAP lecturers, researchers would experience would make them think that comparing themselves with the teaching intensive colleagues, it seems that the research lane was not so secure, because the performance appraisals would evaluate your funding results. So we have research funding, they need to have that secured. And then they also have to fulfill particular requirements in terms of how many papers they can submit to top tier peer-reviewed journals. And then the last one may also be relevant to all of us because we're all teachers, and somehow good teachers, very caring teachers. And we have to balance all these multiple roles at the same time, because when it comes to teaching, administrative work also comes along with that. And on top of these kind of teaching, administrative, and other student related activities and consultation, that kind of workload, you also have to do research at the same time. But don't forget that many of us will have families, and we only have 24 hours. So in that, some lecturers will think that the boundary that sets apart the research and teaching staff is kind of obscure. Okay, so this kind of precarity in the research lane, as found from the interview, would be to balance multiple roles at the same time. Aside from the roles that they have outside of academia or outside of the institution. And also the new teaching duties for grant application, because these lecturers usually would teach the associate level English EAP courses. And when they are applying for external grants, major external grants, they have to teach a certain amount of undergraduate courses. So that means there's a total update of their research repertoire and moderation practices, assessment practices, and how they are going to communicate with the administrative support. And then we also have to experience uncertain research output. And that would be a little bit different from precarity in terms of unstable employment in other ELT centers when EAP lecturers would be employed on short contracts, 1-year contracts, or even like having adjunct positions, or we don't know what happens next year, that kind of instability or insecurity, or marginalizing the EAP unit as remedial butler service, meaning that the EAP lecturers are expected to help students from all disciplines in the college to fix their grammar. But is it really so? Are we, as EAP lecturers myself, are we just proofreading the text for the students? What else are we doing? So I was interested in knowing how the research-intensive EAP staff overcome being in a relatively insecure post in terms of the uncertainties about their career outlook, their career components as researcher, teacher, administrator, everything. I found that in the interview, I didn't clearly prompt their views on this, but they would have a very unanimous reflection on their own identities as scholar. And one of them told me that they has been feeling very enthusiastic about being a scholar, but they also was being very realistic in that the family members, her dad, I think, advised her not to do research because there are lots of uncertainties out of being a researcher. So she chose to be a lecturer in the first place. But then when the opportunity comes, so they have a research scholar scheme. So she enrolled in it, she applied for that, and she got approved, so she can start to live her dream. And then as a PhD holder, some lecturers would think that it's quite normal to be interested in research, especially when the lecturer has been doing EAP-related study during his PhD study. So he kind of extended his research interest in the new setting to look at different literacy issues in a community college or at different levels, maybe associate degree level, and so on. So they all talk about being trained PhDs, and it's a waste if they only teach. And I remember one of them emphasized that he doesn't want to be a teacher. And he kept emphasizing that I am a researcher lecturer, not lecturer researcher. So in face of the changes in front of them, one thing that remains constant is their upholding the identity, not just being teachers, but they have been wanting to do research in a teaching intensive institution. And they do welcome changes. They feel positive about college's research initiatives. So one of them told me that the college doesn't really stipulate what kind of research they're doing. It doesn't have to be pedagogically related. They can do literature, they can do other things that are not directly related to EAP teaching. So they have also been benefited with teaching remission for research writing and developing new projects. And so they also regard lane changing from the teacher lane to the research lane would be a good direction for pursuing research. And it gives them a kind of impression that they are no more just teachers. And one of them told me that before engaging in research, it feels more like being a secondary school teacher, having to be very caring, having to deal with students' issues. And not that they are not enthusiastic about that, but it's just that having a new identity as a researcher in the college gives them a space for them to think about what kind of research they can do and how they can test out their researchers' ability. So one thing that is special would be that if it turns out that they do not find the research lane suitable, we've got a safety. They've got a safety net. They can always go back to the teaching track. Okay, focusing on teaching, focusing on administrative or management excellence. Unlike university proper, when you done certain years of research and it turns out your output is not satisfactory, you will have to go. That kind of publish and perish, the kind of precarious situation. So they don't have to face that. And one thing they also mentioned is that how they want to leverage research, how they want to tap into the research findings for improving their teaching. So that's one thing they keep emphasizing in the interview, saying that it's very important to know the theoretical background. So it kind of fits into the description about EAP practitioners in aside from teaching excellence, they also have to widen their knowledge base about the theories behind pedagogy or maybe even linguistic knowledge, how you can scaffold students with writing and all kinds of different theoretical frameworks that would help them explain the ideas more clearly to students and motivate students to learn and how they could improve teaching. Because in one sentence, as lecturer D would summarize, would be that teaching and research, in her point of view, should feed each other. Another thing very interesting would be that these researchers, when it comes to proposal writing or proposing new ideas for research, they would embrace some kind of entrepreneur mindset. They would think about how they can sell their ideas and how to be groundbreaking. Because I asked them a question about, well, I've been doing a lot of text analysis, but maybe doing text analysis for research or for securing funding is not sexy anymore. So what can you do? And the lecturer said, you don't think of text analysis as a project itself, but you use that as a tool. So as long as you have a project that is innovative, that can solve problems, and how you can pitch the ideas to make sure the fund givers would know that you are trying to solve the problems and you can hit the keywords. I know that some colleagues would be very strategic about how they design the projects or how they are going to submit the projects in order to be more fundable in that sense. And aside from that kind of business-like thinking, at a personal level, it will be building a very self-regulated or self-disciplined pattern, because with fewer teaching hours, we have to be very careful about how we control, how we manage our time. And this is definitely what we are trying to do, or what I am trying to do to manage time better. And they also mentioned about how they can link different talents of other colleagues in order to strengthen collaboration, to try to piece puzzles together. So one lecturer was being very figurative, how they can complement each other's strength to add up the outcomes, to speed up the outcomes, to be more productive in general. So from the reflections of the interviewees, we can see that on the one hand, they fulfill the descriptions of being teaching entrepreneurs in that they are innovative, they want to be collaborate with others, they are motivated, they are present in the work, they have strong work ethic, they don't miss any opportunities in front of them, and they have a good body of knowledge, and they are also very dedicated in terms of balancing all the roles, facing work pressure, working long hours, that kind of thing. And they are resourceful and they can take risks because, as I said, having to teach new courses just for applying for grants or just for doing research may take some risks. And they can see the goals in front of them because they have their own personal goals to pursue and they want to make their teaching better. So they want to have self-improvement. So they are self-improvement oriented. And they also can be fit into some kind of what we call research entrepreneurship. Aside from being autonomous to engage themselves in research independently, they will also think about how they can build relationships with their surrounding environment or in their own community to form alliance and joint ventures. So having these in mind, having these qualities in mind, maybe we can think about some competence models for developing teaching professional development initiatives based on the qualities and attributes of teaching or research entrepreneurs. And finally, in terms of support that we have, the researchers, the lecturers reflected that they receive financial support for editing journals, attending conferences, and the admin support for grant application. And because of the COVID, we have fewer chances to connect, like physically, but also we think about how we can develop small individual support groups because of the lack of physical contact or the face-to-face contact. Like there's a small writing group that I am leading, not really leading, I am sharing with a couple of my colleagues, in that aside from sitting down for 2 hours just to write something, we also share our perceptions on our research or the difficulties that we have encountered. So maybe at the end of the day, we can't really solve the problems in the meeting, but having some kind of the emotional support or that kind of support would be very important for researchers to or research lecturers to go on. And one researcher has also pointed out that it would be good that we can invite rising scholars who come and sharing with them how they would write proposals to secure funds, how they would write their journal articles in order to maximize their opportunities to get published. And one lecturer will also think about whether there would be a clearer division of labor between lecturer and researcher. And most importantly, whether they could have more time to really sit down and focus on research. So because this present study has just focused on mainly the research-intensive lecturers, in the future's directions would be how to, adding voices or inviting voices of teaching lane EAP researchers who may be also research active, in that we could also ask them, as you are doing research, why are you not considering the research lane? And it will also be good to talk with the college management in that how they see the researchers or the research lane EAP lecturers issues or what they wish to have in terms of support. Or maybe this one would be of interest of colleagues from other disciplines, for example, psychology. So perhaps it's also good to introduce theoretical frameworks on motivation, because aside from the external factors motivating teachers to move on to the research lane, maybe there are also intrinsic motivation factors pushing and pulling them when they are deciding whether they are joining the research lane, or being more engaged in research, or in general, whether they are satisfied with their position therein. So that's all from me right now. I think we still have a couple of minutes for discussion and see whether we could start opening up our dialogues by thinking about what the difficulties we are facing and what solutions we have when we are dealing with multiple roles, balancing our different roles. Thank you so much. Let me see. So if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, if you have any comments, please feel free to chip in. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Esther. And that's indeed a kind of leap of faith.
Eric, I have a comment.
Yes, please. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, I'm doing good, thank you.
I always have a problem with kind of creating a dichotomy between research and teaching, especially in pedagogical context. I know you've talked about lecturers moving towards more research and the insecurities that they might feel. But just commenting that from even the administrator's point of view, I think there shouldn't be a dichotomy. In fact, having taught before should be an asset, and teaching simultaneously and doing research should be an asset. So yeah, so that you have to, some of your respondents did say that. They said they don't want to just teach. They want to do research so that they can enrich their teaching. So we are facing similar, I mean, usually language centers have are given the remit of just teaching, and research is never acknowledged. Those of us who kind of take part in research, it's in our own time, and it is time consuming. It's far more time consuming than teaching, but it's never acknowledged. And yeah, it's quite disheartening.
Thank you. And Joe also has a comment that why the dichotomy in the first place?
Exactly.
I think it's the division of labor, right? But I'm not saying that when you are teaching intensive when you have chosen the teaching lane or teaching track, you can't do research. I know a lot of ELC colleagues are very interested in doing research or very enthusiastic about research, and doesn't have the contradiction with each other. It's just how I'm not sure whether you care about what students think about you, but it's also that kind of perception about EAP lecturers in an institution, in that whether EAP is a discipline itself, or is just something of a service that you can see everywhere. But I can't put my finger on why you're important. It's just another subject to finish in my first year or second year of study. So maybe we want to break that kind of pattern or that kind of perception, or we don't want to. I'm not sure whether it's a kind of pride or something. It is more like whether we want that we want to break the stereotypical image of us being just teacher.
Yeah.
And in that, after finishing that 15 hours and you're done, that kind of thing. And obviously we have done more than that, like necessarily underwater. as the saying goes. But we have done so much that we should be recognized, whether it's by the management or whether it's by the peers, in that we should share somehow an equal status with, like, even with just like language or literature as like a distinctive autonomous discipline, or even with other disciplines such as science, psychology, that kind of, yes, so we want to be recognized.
I agree. I think all teaching is service, if you define it in this way. We are, and EAP, exploring, you know, the genre and language. I remember, because I'm working collaboratively across the faculty, and I remember once we looked at physics final year projects, and we kind of studied them, their structure, and we divided them into 3 types: product-oriented, I forgot now, which was like 2014. And then we presented that kind of classification to the physics lecturer, professor, and he said, in my 30-something years, I had never thought that I've been assigning these projects to my students. I had never thought about categorizing them in this way. So thank you. And so, of course, it's a legitimate field of study, like any other, or even more important, in my opinion. For students to teach them optimally, we need to work closely with other disciplines to help our students.
Yeah. Well, when said you have to research to write good syllabus, for example, and they are not separable. And I think even the slightest observation that you have of your students, how they are faring in the classroom, is kind of the little research that we are doing on a day-to-day basis. Absolutely. It's just that we don't write it down like as research articles, but it doesn't mean that we as teachers are not doing research at all. So, Letitia.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I couldn't agree more with everything that has been said, with Shari, what you were saying about that dichotomy, because I think many of us see our field as a very serious field. We contribute a lot of expertise, and just in order to do our practice in our classroom, we need the research. It's just we don't kind of we don't want to just reflect day to day based on, we need to read, we need to try things, we need to, and then we need to share it. It's kind of part of our practice. So that's another theory practice dichotomy that doesn't really work that well. But I think, I mean, Eric, in your context, you're describing something that is, you know, like a structure that comes from the top, right? Those 2 lanes. I just wonder if, in a sense, it's not, I mean, with all the challenges you have highlighted, it does allow for the different practitioners to choose. And you've said some practitioners are just really not that interested. They don't consider it part of the job. And now, I mean, this is always something that has fascinated me, the reason for that, whether you know, whether it's because in the field we accept there are entries at different levels. So some people come into EAP from an EFL background, others come from an applied linguistics PhD, or not PhD, but a more. So maybe that's I mean, definitely it's a strange field for that, because we are quite different, and we see our mission quite differently, right?
Yeah. I think that yeah, I agree with you, Letitia, but I think we have advantages over other disciplines. So as language teachers, we often have access to students from all disciplines, if not, you know, and that is a kind of, I mean, that is an advantage that administrators and management should acknowledge. I mean, the kind of research, even collaborative research we can do and compare, no other department can. So that to me is a reason in itself for the management to value research done by the English language centers, and to actually give us resources to do research, to explore language standards. And when the language standards go down, then we get blamed, you know, or somebody's in the, employer said something, and then we bear the brunt of that criticism. I have teaching coming, so I have 6:30 to 9:30 evening, so I'll be leaving. I really enjoyed your talk, both of you. And also seeing you. I haven't been very active in our volume discussions.
Oh, well, don't worry, you have been. Your presentation was brilliant. No, that's what I said, right? We'll discuss that later, right? How enriching it has been, but how challenging as well.
But we are writing. We are really busy, Sweta and I. We are working on it hectically, so that we can meet some of the deadlines. Anyway, really lovely talking to you and seeing so many people I know, Esther, and a number of people I know here. So.
And I was just saying to Letitia, I hope that I'm not the last one submitting the chapter.
Me too, I fear that.
Just not hoping to be the last one.
No, you're not. You're not at all. You're not at all. No,
you're not. Definitely. I know this.
So sometimes it's what worries me more as a lecturer myself is not teaching. I've just told my students today about the things that I'm going to do now, is that, well, I have been doing presentations in front of you all. I feel very relaxed. But in terms of I'm worried more about this kind of presentations and the writing assignments that I have. And I told them I have my own assignments too. So I'm with you guys. So I'm trying to build that kind of empathy that you're not the only one doing assignments. I am doing my assignments as well.
We should have invited Alex to be the bad cop. The bad cop of the editing team. No, but Shari, I just wanted to say, when you talked about that physics teacher, a professor telling you this, I think that's when we have to collect as many of those, because that is where I think management doesn't understand. They may have a very limited way of understanding language, right? It might just be related to grammar, not to communication, not to. So I think the more we get, this is why I presented about those two things, we were valuable to the nursing and to the students. We were valuable to the College of Design, right?
This morning, I met somebody from social work, and we have been collaborating with them since 2013. And they were so appreciative. They want to bring all their subjects into, I've started a peer mentoring program at Writing Center. Just recently, we are piloting it. And they were so appreciative. The only thing is we don't have the resources they're waiting for, their students to get this support in various ways, but we need the resources. And anyway, I better get ready for my evening students.
Nice to see you, Shari. Thank you for coming.
Take care. Bye. I really enjoyed both of your talk. Thank you so much to Esther and Speed for organizing this.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you, Shari.
Bye, Esther.
Thank you.
Hi, Esther.
Hi, Eric. Yeah, Eric, and I have a question about the experience of your participants. And so when you do analysis, I just wonder if you thought about the experience, because this is actually what I observed. And for the teachers and who are starting their career, and they might want to, I won't say put additional effort, but they would be more open and to different ways of improving their practices, right? And so I guess they would be more willing to engage in professional development as well as research on EAP practices. And while some of the teachers and who are more experienced, this is just my hypothesis, I'm not commenting on the practice of the college. And I just wonder if some of the more experienced teachers, because they thought they are really experienced, and so it's already good enough, and so they won't be having the kind of motivation to enhance their practice. Because they've already been really successful in their career.
Yes.
And so I just wonder if you've thought of this particular point when you did the analysis.
Well, I didn't particularly ask this question, But I did ask another batch of lecturers who are from the teaching lane, who are relatively more research active. But in terms of the reasons why they don't consider going to the research lane, they hope to find out what's it for them when it comes to having the research lane aside from teaching remission, because it's just more than that. They are not going to do research just for the teaching remission. They want to see how they can benefit from the research and also I think I've also made that point regarding having to change the teaching components, the teaching profile. I had a chat with another colleague from the psychology department, the SSHD, the other day about our research. And he said that his observation would be the ones who are more established in the teaching, excellent, would be more resistant in taking a new adventure in that kind of thing. There's too much risk to take. It's not that they can't do it. They are, many of them have PhDs. It seems that they need to see a clearer career outlook when they are engaged in research, aside from improving the teaching, enriching the knowledge base of their fields, whether there are a particular career path they can take. Because after the 3 years, after the 6 years, maybe as a research lane colleague, what's in it for them? So this is something that maybe they would want to think about carefully before moving on. And I think that's all for the moment for now. But maybe it would also be a very good initiative to look at how experienced teachers think about doing research or seeing others doing research. Because one respondent told me that before they have the research lane, her voice would say that why bother doing research? It's too much to take when it comes to teaching already. You're teaching 15, you're teaching 18 hours, and you are already a very good teacher. So why bother doing research? But that would go back to our discussions earlier on, right after my presentation, in that teaching and research is like feeding back with each other. And I'm sure you all will agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Esther.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
So if you have anything to add, I'm very happy to keep in touch with you, like emails and whatnot. Yeah, so I will share my email with you. So maybe Jennifer, we can wrap up for now. It's 3 minutes to 6, and I'm sure all of us will want to have dinner. I haven't had mine.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Cheung, for your wonderful sharing. We would like to have your feedback on today's seminar. Would you please spend a few minutes filling out the feedback survey by scanning the QR code? And the link of the feedback survey can also be found in the chat room in a moment. E-certificates and slides of today's seminar will be sent to your registered email in the next couple of days. And this is the end of today's seminar. Thank you for attending. I hope you have enjoyed it. We look forward to seeing you again at the next event. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.